Okay.
Professor
Thank
Kumar?
you. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, dear participants, welcome back after this
Uh,
break.
yeah.
Now, let us start our next session. A foreign expert from Medical College of Georgia, Augusta University, USA, Professor Arni S.R. Srinivas Rao are with us. He is the professor in the Medical College of Georgia and director at the Laboratory of Theory and Mathematical Modeling, Medical College of Georgia, Augusta University. He held a permanent faculty position at Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata until 2012. He had taught and performed research at several premier institutions, including the Indian Statistical Institute, ISI, University of Oxford, UK, the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, India, and University of Guelph, Canada, prior to his joining at Augusta University, United States. He has more than 60 research publications to his credit. He has proved a fundamental theorem of stationary population, Rao-Carey theorem, and partition theorem in population, artificial intelligence model for even the artificial intelligence models for COVID-19 and HIV/AIDS he developed. These have been used even in the formulation of different policies. So we welcome you once again for this technical session. Now it's let us have the privilege of listening to you, sir. It's over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Huda. I appreciate your introduction. And I once again thank Professor Kumar and Dr. Redhu for their hard work towards this program and making all the facilities really working toward with me and all the course contents. So it is actually combined course from all three of us. It is what the content, the design was done by all three of us, and we all approved the entire content. And in fact, they both, Professor Kumar and Professor Redhu, tried to contact with the GAN program. The main administrative responsibility was taken by them. And I want to thank once again for them for all their hard work. Regarding the coursework, as in the introduction and many other distinguished honorary guests in the introduction, they mentioned India actually very strong in mathematics and statistics and all the many other basic sciences, including physics, chemistry, theoretically. Now the theoretical knowledge, whatever we gained, that need to be translated. So all those countries, like, there are many countries um, who are the same financial status when India got independence. This is like Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav in 75 years, India really advanced in various things, except the application side. Application sides India is doing, but there are theoretical applications, not practical applications on the ground level. So there were countries like several countries I mentioned various other my talks that which are almost like same financial status like India. When India got independent, the GDP was same, but those countries went far beyond India in terms of the GDP because those countries, whatever theoretical knowledge they have, they applied to their own benefits, and the technology has been developed. Development of technology means you are applying the science because science is the base for the technology, and just having a theoretical knowledge in technology is not enough. You need to manufacture. Similarly, basic science, the whatever theory we have, be it in a chemistry, be it in a biology, be it in genetics, we need to apply for our own population benefits. So in that sense, this particular course designed by the MDU. In fact, I want to give the entire credit of designing, only teaching, lecturing part is by me in consultation with me, but the design, basic course design was written by Professor Kumar and his team. So I want to thank them for such a wonderful design of the course. Only a little bit of hint I was given when I was actually traveling in England. That time they contacted me, but the entire hard work of the design was done by them. So I want to once again thank them for this wonderful course, and I hope the students learn the theory very well as the application side. So one of the things the students they need to cooperate with me is feel free to ask questions. Anything comes to your mind, feel free to stop me and ask. Don't hesitate. This is a easy, simple question. This is a complicated. No. Just speak up your mind because this course is for you. This course is not for me and not for Professor Kumar, not for us. This is for you, all the participants. Please try to focus the course. I mean, try to work along with me as I show the slides. Stop me whenever it's not clear, or you can keep your questions at the end, but don't leave your doubts in your mind. Just pick it up. Be it a easy question, be it a complicated. Don't worry for the level of questions you have. Just pick it up. That's very important. That's very important component of the interactive session, because we know that we are almost end of the COVID era. More or all the courses are being started in person, but still remaining this some of the courses of GAN remaining. Whatever the sanction, I think they want to finish it up through online. That's a good idea because of the time constraints. They want to finish it up the backlog courses online, and perhaps they will start the fresh courses again in person. So this is a good opportunity for all of us to learn this course as I go through. So given that stochastic process actually plays important role, the society in general, many areas of science, in reality, the things are stochastic in nature. They are not deterministic. Certain things are deterministic, like things in the space, things in the planetary motions. There is no randomness. Every year you see that planets move in a certain direction, certain things, they are all deterministic. But certain things like the genetic mutations, epidemic spread, or development of cancer in a human body or in animals, they are all stochastic. So these involve some randomness, or yield of a crop. We cannot predict. If you cannot predict the yield of a crop for sure, there is some uncertainties involved. So which are the models, the things in the nature which we can predict for sure? We say it is a deterministic. We try to build models which are called deterministic models for those situations, for those occasions when we cannot predict. Like say every individual, we know that cancer, development of cancer is uncertain. We are not sure. Certain individuals with smokers may develop cancer. Some of the smokers may not never develop a throat or the throat or lungs cancer. Why? Because the inside human body we have not fully understood, and it is not same for each and every individual. Similarly, the crops. If the farmer provides the same level of water, same level of pesticide, same level of the food for the crop, still the yields may not be same. So this is difference between the stochasticity versus the deterministic. So deterministic things, we develop mathematical models. For things which are uncertain, we build statistical models with some error component, and some other situations we build stochastic models. So this particular course is about the stochastic models that involve probability concepts and some mathematical principles. So first lecture and a couple of lectures in the beginning, we'll learn the theory behind that. I'll try to go a little bit faster, but try to go as much as slowly, but little bit faster, because most of you perhaps know this course, except few. But those who know, use this as a further training on the whatever they know. Still, they can still ask questions to me. Those who do not know, feel free to stop me, because someone sometime have to know. It's not that everyone knows by birth everything. So those who have never studied probability concepts, when I start them, please feel free to note your questions at the end of the talk today, or you can stop me during the course. Someone moderators, they can let me know. If you raise your hand, there is a button somewhere on the bottom. You can click that, raise your hand, and the moderator can stop me. So how much time I have for about, should I take 45 minutes, Professor Kumar, first lecture? Because there is some delay in the timing. So how much time I should spend on the first lecture, please?
Just reduce by 15 minutes, sir.
Sorry?
Just reduce by 15 minutes, sir.
How much?
Then
15
45
minutes?
minutes.
45?
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. Thank you. So let me start my slides now. That's the introduction to stochastic process. You saw the course content anyway. So broadly, the content goes as follows. So we will review the essential probability theory and concepts, and then we discuss the discrete and continuous Markov chains, Chapman-Kolmogorov equations, classification of states, stationary distributions, n-step transition probabilities, and calculation of n-step transition probabilities, time inhomogeneous situations, branching processes, and Monte Carlo simulations of stochastic process, and finally applications of all these. There are also applications in medical science. So a set of all elementary events called the sample space. Elementary events here, I mean that the simple events, any event which are outcome of some experiments. If you conduct an experiment like coin tossing, it's an experiment. Or if you are putting some plants and then you want to measure the yields, in your backyard or within the home, you put some small plants, tomato plants or any chili plant, and then you want to measure the end of the season in 3 months, how many each pot of tomato plant, how many tomatoes grown. That's an experiment. So event of getting a 3 tomatoes, event of getting a 5 tomatoes, event of getting a 3 chilies, they're all events. They are called elementary events, means events which are outcomes of an experiment. Or you toss a coin, you play Ludo, so you toss a die. So that's an experiment. Experiment is anything you want to conduct some small experiments, and then those experiments have the outcomes are not predictable. Not predictable for sure. Because when you grow a tomato plant, and then during the season, say March to June, that's the right season for the 3 months, the crop season, plant's crop season. We will never be sure that each tomato plant will have how many tomatoes for sure. Never, never, never. That means there is no formula that can give you exact number of tomatoes grown in a plant. Similarly, exact number of chilies. Similarly, if you have a larger experiment of 15, 20 years, the mangoes or bananas like 1 year, never. So these are all elementary experiments like tossing a die, tossing a coin. We will never know before we toss a coin, we will never know the outcome for sure. So there is some chance factors are involved. So these are all, that means omega means all the events, elementary events, all such kind of events we call sample space, all possible events. Like if you toss a die, there are possibilities, 6 events. Either be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Toss a coin, 2 events, either heads or tail. So all these are called elementary events and sample space. The omega be the collection of all that. So if a tomato grown or in a chili, you have a number of chilies from either 0 to some larger number. So in simple, the omega BP be the probability space, where B is the Borel field of sets in omega, and P be the probability measure on B. So if you have a A1, A2, AK with a disjoint or mutual exclusive events or disjoint means one event blocks other event to happen. They are called mutually exclusive. Mutual exclusive means if the same time, if you toss a die, the outcome is 3, it means that event is blocking to happen all the other events. Other event of getting 1, getting a 2, getting 4, 5, 6. Only 3 occur. So 3 and 4 and 5, they're all mutually exclusive. Similarly, toss a coin, you get heads means getting a tail at the same time is blocked. That means they are disjoint. So omega is a union of all the disjoint or mutual exclusive events, this omega. So given an elementary event, that means whatever I explained so far, then it will be one of that. So one of the finite number of options A1, A2, AK. So that means getting a probability of 1 when you toss a coin, if you toss a die, getting a probability of 2, probability of 3, summation of all that would be 1, because there are the finite number of options are there. So summing that would be automatically 1. The total value will be 1. Similarly, tossing a coin, probability of getting a heads, only 2 options, the heads and tails. So either head or tail. So when you toss one coin, there will be chance of getting a head, chance of getting a tail. So these two are mutually exclusive. So total probability of heads plus probability of tail is 1. So given that information, we have 2 fundamental axioms in probability. That is, axiom 1 is probability of event A, any event A is 0 or more than 0. And sum of or union of all the events is sample space. We just saw that. So 2 fundamental axioms. Because there is no negative chance of getting negative probability. Because either you get when you toss a coin, you get a head or you get a tail. So when you get a head, the chance of getting when you get a head, chance of getting a tail is 0. When you get a tail, chance of getting heads is 0. So there is no negative probability there. Or you get a probability which is more than 0. Similarly, union of all those events is omega. There is no escape. Either there has to be one of those. When you toss a die, either of those have to occur. That's the reason the union of all the events is omega, the sample space. And already we discussed that, because the intersection between that means they're mutual exclusive. So between 2 events, getting the same time heads and same time tail is empty. That means there's no such possibility. Similarly, the yield of a tomato, if a plant gets exactly say 100 tomatoes, and the plant gets exactly 101 tomatoes, these two are mutual exclusive events. So same time both cannot happen. Getting yield, there are randomness involved. That means you cannot predict in advance. Those events you cannot predict in advance. At the same time, one event blocks other event. So then the probability measure, a probability function defined on all these sets, each set, each occurring, getting a head, getting a tail, the probability, the function which defined on all these sample spaces and satisfying these two axioms is called probability measure. That means if there is a function p that defined on all the sets in omega sample space with the domain, that means all the possible options of getting a outcome of an experiment, what are all the options, then attach a probability for each of that and satisfying those two axioms in the previous slide, that is probability of a greater than or equal to 0 and union of all the events is omega. Such a function is called probability measure. So what are the consequences of these two axioms? As we already discussed, we saw that these probability values lie between 0 and 1, including 0 and 1. Some events, exact probabilities, you will have a probability of getting the certain event is 1. Suppose, a coin, you take a coin and both sides you have a tail, both sides are heads. So probability of getting head is 1 in that case. You can predict always for sure. But they are all not a standard examples. And empty set, probability of getting empty set is 0. The proof of that, you will see automatically see that the empty set union of all these again sample space, because this is again the union of all possible events is omega. So empty set union of that is again omega, which is equal to that. And probability whole space equal to 1. And fourth probability is the condition, the outcome is consequence is probability of union of the events. All the events is equal to the sum of the probabilities. Probability of the union equal to sum of the probabilities. Union means all the events, like you have getting a tail or getting a head is equal to probability of getting a head plus probability of getting a tail. That is, probability of getting a head is half, probability of getting a tail is half. So half less of 1. So probability of union of all the events is equal to the sum of the probability of the events. So that means for any countable union of disjoint sets whose union also belong to the omega. That for under that condition, because if there are union, whenever the union of ai, because we are discussing only those cases where union of ai equal to omega. That's why this is written there. So if that is not union of all if it is the union of ai is not belong to the omega, that means some of the events are unknown to us, then they are not, that union does not form omega. So this is as well, common sense easily says, as based on the previous slides. Obviously, this is true. Only exception cases when union doesn't belong to omega. That means all the sample space is. That means omega is not a sample space. I mean, it's not fully. We don't know all the outcomes of an experiment. If we don't know all possible outcomes of an experiment, we cannot verify that. That is union of ai equal to omega. That's why you see that union of ai union of ai complement, which is equal to omega, is again union of ai complement. That means this is equal to union of ai complement. This union, if you expand, this is equal to union of ai means a1 union a2 union and so on. So now apply probability for that. Apply probability on this consequence. That is probability of union of ai plus, because we saw that probability of union ai equal to sum of the probabilities. So probability of union ai plus probability of union of ai complement. So this becomes plus here because applying probability, which is equal to probability of omega, and then apply probability here. Probability of this is first. This line is a events line. This is a events. Now apply probability on the event. The probability of union of that plus probability of a1 plus probability of a2. So the probability of union of ai plus probability of union of ai complement equal to probability of omega is equal to 1, as you saw in the consequence of axiom, which is equal to that on the right hand side. So probability of union equal to sum of the probabilities of all the events which are mutually exclusive. Of course, these steps are not needed, based on the previous slides, automatically the students would have understood. So these axioms, these fundamental things gives us this will help us to later when you see in the course in the stochastic process. The two things are important. One is the state space and the type of the process. So for understanding the states and the states within a state space, when we learn that, I will again define them. You see that all the events in an experiment have to be well defined, and then those events, the probability of those events we need to compute. That's why probability of A1 union A2 equal to probability of A1 plus probability of A2. If you have only two events, A1 and A2, the coin heads and tails, only when this intersection is empty. That means there is no possibility of any getting a event. There is no common space between two events. If A1 is a set of multiples of 3 and A2 is a set of odd numbers in an experiment of tossing a die, so this violates that means because 3 multiples of 3 and then a set of odd numbers, if A2 is a set of odd numbers, A1 is a set of multiples of 3 when you toss a die, that is 3 and 6, and a set of odd numbers. 3 is an odd number. Then this violates. You see that automatically A1 intersection A2 is not, they are not disjoint because A1 is a multiple of 3 and A2 is a set of odd numbers. Set of odd numbers in tossing a die, that would not satisfy. So under that kind of examples, this won't work. But if you define A1 such that A1 is set of odd numbers and A2 is set of even numbers, then the same experiment, these two same time cannot occur. So the outcome of a die at the same time is not an odd number, same time it cannot be an even number. But if you define A1, A2, so how we define these two events, that matters. So if A1 we define a set of all multiples of 3 and A2 we define a set of odd numbers, then you see that A1 intersection A2 is not always empty. So the definition of these events are very important here. So that's how the stochastic process, we need to define the events very properly, the outcomes very properly. Exactly. And then similarly, we need to define the states and state spaces. When we define that, we'll learn that. So these are all foundations for defining the states and state spaces. So suppose A1 be a non-increasing sequence of sets such that limit of AI is intersection of AI. Limit as I goes to infinity, AI equal to intersection of AI. Then limit of the probabilities. If you apply this is from the real analysis. This is not from the probability. So you apply this. This is a real analysis statement, and then you apply on to the probability. Limit as I goes to infinity, probability of AI equal to probability of the limit. This is a consequence of that. So limit of probability equal to probability of the limit under these set of the events which we defined in the AI in the previous case. The same way, union of AI equal to omega. Under that situation, and A1, A2, they are all mutually exclusive. Under that setup, limit of the probability as I goes to infinity, limit of probability of AI equal to probability of the limit of AI. So using the De Morgan law, we can prove the statement there. So union of AI complement of the AI intersection of the, so union of AI complements are intersection of AI and complement of that. So obviously we can see that, this I'm skipping here. This is the elementary things already from the high school, De Morgan principles. So using the De Morgan law, these are all, for high school elementary intermediate, the +2 level knowledge, we can prove it using De Morgan law. So I'm skipping that, all these things. Just for, these slides eventually I will share with all of you anyway. The course coordinators will share all the slides with you all. So don't worry just try to listen them. And then if you try to note down the results, that's fine. Or otherwise, still the entire thing, whatever I'm showing on the screen will be shared with you all. So that's why you see that the probability of the limit is limit of the probability of that. Yeah. Probability of the limit is equal to the limit of the probabilities. Just we applied the De Morgan principle. So other implications, when they are not disjoint, these events under the disjoint or mutually exclusive conditions, we just showed that probability of the limit is limit of probability of an event is equal to the probability of the limit of those events under the disjoint conditions or mutually exclusive conditions. But when they are not disjoint, what happens? That means if one set is subset of other set, one event set of A1 is subset of A2, then probability of A2 minus A1 is probability of A2 minus probability of A1, which is a probability A1. That means this implies because A1 subset of A2, the probability of getting A1 is less than or equal to probability of getting A2 because A1 is subset of A2. And probability of A2 union A1 is probability of A1 plus A2 minus probability. This we know. So this implies probability of A2 union A1 less than or equal to probability of A1 plus probability of A2. Because probability A1 less than probability of A2. Okay. So this is when A1, A2 are not disjoint. That means when they are not disjoint, probability of A1 union probability of A2 equal to less than or equal to probability of A1 plus probability of A2. Only under not disjoint. And the disjoint, when they are mutually exclusive, yeah. So this is the De Morgan law. Using that we proved. So De Morgan law says that union of the complement of the events equal to intersection of the events complement. This is a De Morgan law. There are three events. Union of, that means A1, A2, A3. Union of A1, A2, A3 is if omega, that is what the sample space, whole sample space. Then A1 intersection, A1 complement union, A2 complement union, A3 complement equal to intersection of the three events complement of that. If there are only three events. So if there are many events, some k number of events, finite number of events, then union of AI complement equal to intersection of the AI complement. Just a quick review. Most of you know it anyway, so this is a quick review of that. Okay. So based on when they are not disjoint, this is for two events. Generally, if they are not disjoint, probability of union of AI is less than or equal to sum of the PI. The sum of PI, if they are equal to, they are same, that means the union of AI will be sum of the PI. But when then all events are not part of the union, that means all the sample space are not covered in this union, then that will the probability of that would be less than sum of the probability, because if all the events are there, probability equal to 1, and if some of the events are not covered, not in part of the sample space, then probability of union of AI would be less than 1. Let us see the consequence of random variable. Convergence of a sequence of random variables. So convergence here, this is same as the limit concept, whatever we learned in the calculus, the limit concept of a limit. So suppose we take xn, these are sequence of random variables. So here random variable means a real valued function. The value, the value random numbers are different than random variables here. Random variables are nothing but they are real valued function whose domain is a sample space. But the value lie between 0 and 1, including 0 and 1. So xn be a sequence of random variables. N greater than or equal to 1 means x1 random variable. First outcome of if you keep on tossing a die, imagine it, you're tossing a die infinitely many times. So first outcome, heads. Second outcome could be heads. Third outcome could be heads, and so on. If you keep on tossing a coin, or if you're tossing a die infinitely many times, the outcomes may be 6 only. The total outcome may be 6, but you are tossing it infinitely many times. Suppose experiment is. That's why xn n greater than 1 means x1 first outcome, x2 second outcome, x3 third outcome, and so on. So xn be a sequence of random variables. There are two types of convergences we discussed. Convergence of xn to a constant value. These are all. There could be these convergence could be weakly or strongly convergence. So weakly convergence we define as a sequence xn to a constant c written as xn converges to c. The weakly convergence or probability convergence is for every epsilon greater than 0, if the probability of xn minus c greater than epsilon equal to 0, as limit n tends to infinity, probability of xn minus c greater than epsilon equal to 0. So I'm not going too much into the real analysis here. And if you need at the end of the lecture, let me know. I need to quickly can give a quick overview of the convergence, all these things which are part of the real analysis. I also teach. I've been teaching the real analysis and complex analysis set theory. Other courses I regularly teach them, but then this particular course, the focus is on stochastic process. So we'd like to focus focus the principles of stochastic process, and then the random numbers and states and state spaces and type of the stochastic process, all that. That's the main focus of this particular course. But still, if student feel like discussing that, I would be happy to more focus on the convergence. But in general, the statement itself says that limit as n tends to infinity, probability xn minus c is greater than 0. If such an event, the difference, that means the xn minus c, after a certain stage, the convergence of a sequence, if a1, a2, a3, they're the sequence of, they form a sequence, an is a sequence, then, the after certain stage, we are only bothered about the tail of a sequence. After certain stage, if an minus l or some limit, if that value is less than some epsilon after some stage, then we say that sequence converges to a limit. So if similarly here, the sequence here is sequence of not real numbers, they are real numbers, but they are random variables which lie between 0 and 1, including 0 and 1. Such a sequence of random variables, if they converge to a constant value, that is known as a weak convergence or a probability convergence. So we denote this by xn converges to c, some p above the arrow. Similarly, strongly convergence we define as probability as n larger n goes to infinity. The supremum of n greater than equal to n, xn minus c, probability of that even xn minus c is greater than epsilon, absolute value of xn minus c, that such probability is 0. So strongly convergence. Or equivalently, we say that probability xn equal to c equal to 1. So this is a quick overview, but I would like to stop anytime feel like discussing more. So this is denoted as xn almost sure, as means almost sure, xn converges to c. So there are other kinds of convergences. The convergences are there. Quadratic mean convergence, which is not really needed. These kind of definitions, just for the sake of completeness, I kept them here. So convergence almost sure implies convergence in probability. This I'm going to skip again. So we don't need that, for this particular purpose, this particular course, we don't need. And these inequalities also, I will just touch base on the statements only. There are several inequalities are there. For example, Chebyshev's theorem is there. This particular, we don't use it anywhere, but I kept it for the sake of students, for the completeness of the notes. But we don't need, we don't be using them for our stochastic this thing. Suppose the mean of a sequence of random variables mu I and variance is sigma square. Covariance of the two random variables 0 for I different two different random variables. Then limit as n goes to infinity 1 by n square, summation of sigma I square equal to 0. This implies xn bar mean of that random variables minus mu n bar is converges in probability to 0. That means weakly convergence. If sum mu I equal to mu and sigma I square equal to sigma, that is the constant for all random variables, the mean and these are same, mean and variance are same. Then it says sigma xn bar minus mu is 0. I mean, the converges to 0 with weak convergence. So Chebyshev's theorem satisfies weak law of large numbers, which these are known as weak law of large numbers. Similar Khinchin theorem, I'm going to skip those things. This is not needed, but I just kept it depending on because initially we thought the course would more focus on the theoretical part, because as we, after the student shortlisting, most of the students already gone through these in various levels of their courses, undergraduate, PG level, but still I kept them in the notes so as to, these will be complete. We will not be using anywhere Khinchin theorem in the entire course, but we'll use a basic probability concept, whatever we learned. So all these things, I will keep, as I mentioned, I will keep in the notes. But if the end of the course, again, we have some time, I would like to, any students who would need a review of those things, I would be happy to touch base on all of them. All these inequalities. Yeah. Then after all the inequalities, this is the most important aspect. Probability generating function. This is very needed, very much needed for the stochastic models. Suppose an be the sequence of real numbers, any sequence, and these are such that the value of the outcome lies between 0 and 1, including 0 and 1, the value of the real numbers. So you take a compact interval 0, 1 on the real line, and the real numbers belong to that compact interval. And then a function we define gt is sum of, this gt is a series, a n t power n, that means a0, t power 0, 1, t power 0 is 1, that is a0, a1, t power 1, a1t, a2, t square, sum of, so summing all the values for t lies between -1 to 1, this is an open interval. That means -1 and 1 are not included. Whereas the values of an could be either 0 or more than 0, and they could be 1 or less than 1. That is an value lies between 0 and 1, including 0, that's a 0, 1 closed interval. The value of t is an open interval. The -1 to 1 is not included. So the value will be, that is a mod t less than 1. So such a function gt, that means sum of such a function gt, which is sum of, that is a n t power n starting from 0, a0, t power 0, a0, that means it could be anywhere between 0 and 1, including 0, 1, t power 0 is anywhere 1, a1 t, a2 t square, a3 t power 3, a3 t cube, a4 t power 4, and so on, summing all those things, all those quantities. So gt equal to sum of n equal to 0 to infinity. This is a series. So this is called generating function in general in math. But the same thing, such generating function, because this lie between 0 and 1, these are called probability generating function because the probability values lie between 0 and 1. So GT, such a GT determines completely the sequence using the Taylor expansions, all that we learned in undergraduate days. So instead of sequence, instead of sequence of real numbers, if you replace by the probability, the same sequence, if the probability mass function, because an lie between 0 and 1 means that's nothing but a probability mass function or probability. If it is a continuous random variable, it is a probability. It's a probability density function. If it is a discrete, it's called probability mass function. If it is a continuous, probability density function. Then the random variable GT, this function, this series is known as probability generating function. In general, this is a generated GT is called generating function for any AN under these conditions. But if these are part of a probability, these are part of a sequence of part of a probability mass function, then we say GT is a probability generating function. Because here, A1, A2, AN in math, real analysis, these are A1, A2, AN, they are all determined uniquely using a Taylor expansion. Similarly, here, these denote these A1, A2, AN, the A0, A1, these all becomes probabilities. So probability generating function is very important here in this case in terms of stochastic process. So when we build stochastic models, they can be solved using the probability generating functions. So instead of the real numbers, if you replace that by the probability mass function value, that big GT becomes a probability generating function. So now the crucial definitions of stochastic process we are entering into them. What are the states and what are known as state spaces? Okay, let us define. Now here, please focus, all the students. Of course, you are all listening carefully, but please focus again very carefully what's going on here, and just stop me. Feel free to stop me because this course is for you to understand. This is not to satisfy GAN, and this is not to this is not for any this thing to make happy the MDU or the no. This is for you, all the participants here. Feel free to stop me anywhere you don't understand, even for the review of the things or anything in the past, whatever slides. But from here, the actual stochastic process content starts. After the review of probability, all that the learned. But what is the key elements of stochastic models that start from this slide? So first 50 slides are the review of various things, which you all anyway have to know. But these further things are the essential things for the stochastic process. So let us understand what are the states, the state space, and the states and state space. So these two are technical terms. So J, let J be the set of 1, 2, 3, etc. be the outcome of a random experiment. We already discussed what are the random experiments. That means, in a simple language, the outcome of an experiment we should never able to know. We will never know before an experiment is conducted. That's called random experiment. Like you take a box with another example. Apart from the examples I already provided, take a box of blocks which are which is which is not transparent, and they put some colored balls, all look the same size. Color balls, or maybe some chocolates, or all of same size, and then put them the various colors, put them inside the box, and then you put your hand, pick a ball or pick a candy, pick a chocolate from that, all of same size, same different colors. You mix them enough so that they are all randomly distributed. They are distributed inside whose distribution you are unknown to you. You pick a ball from that box. Can you predict the color of the ball before you pick from the box? No, for sure you cannot. You may guess, but you can never be sure. So this is an experiment. Such an experiment is called random experiment or a lottery ticket. Who will win a lottery? We will never know. So these are such experiments are called random experiments. So the such J, that's all this called state space, and each outcome is called state in this case. So similarly, the coin tossing experiment, head and tail are called two states, and state space is H comma T. That's called state space. H comma T is a state space, and H is a state, T is a state. If you toss a die, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the set of 1, 2, 3, 4, the set is called state space because that's an experiment, the outcome of an experiment. Any set is not a state space. Any set need not be a state space unless unless the set is formed out of a random experiment and all the outcomes of the experiments are put into that set. Is it clear? So all the experimental outcomes need to put that into the set, then only that set becomes a state space. Otherwise, just that is just a set.
So I have a query here that why to give a special name to it state space when it is same as a sample space only for an experiment?
Very good. Very good question. So what happens is here the random variable moves between the various states. But in a random experiment, when you conduct a toss a die, when you get an outcome, say 6, that's it. When you are interested only in 6, what is an outcome? When you go in a cricket match, you see that they go before the referee, with the referee, two captains go and toss a coin. The experiment is done. That's a sample space. What are the possibilities? But state space here, you are allowing the random variable to jump between the spaces. So technically, that's the reason we'll see why we call. So that's how a stochastic process. A stochastic process means we learn because you asked, I'm jumping, I will again come to when we define, we formally come there. But since you asked a good question, the idea here is the random outcomes, we want to measure several outcomes simultaneously. So collection of all the random variables, that becomes a stochastic process. All possible, how the random variable over the time period. First time getting a heads, second time getting a tail, third time and fourth time and so on. So all this collection of outcome of random variables when you study, each time the random variable picks different values because it's a time bound process. But in the earlier in the match, referee going with two captains just one time. But you know the outcome of experiment is heads or tail, head or tail. But you conduct the experiment only once, the match started. Experiment is done. But state space, the random variables, you keep on conducting experiment, you get outcome after outcome, outcome after outcome, you keep on. So you state space, the random variable never crosses the state space. That's a stochastic process. So we'll discuss that. That's why in the stochastic environment, each thing is called, each of the outcome is state. So similarly, if there are two outcomes, where 0, 1 are the two states of an experiment. State. Suppose you're crossing a signal, the car goes to the signal. Whenever next time you are at the signal, so there are three options. Either you are at the orange, or you are at the red or green. There are three states. When you are at the signal, when you reach a certain signal junction in a car, when you're traveling in a car, the three options are there. Three, that's called no fourth color, blue never comes. So only three options are there, three states. And the random event is that when you're driving to the particular signal, that's a random event. So that's how we define signal processing, and these are all the this kind of the experiments, various transportation problems, all that we can use that kind of experiments where you are driving to a particular signal, and then there are only three options are there. That's not signal problem. The signal problem, traffic signal problem. So these are all state space. The all possible outcomes in an experiment here are all possibilities of a signals. So that's why the S is called the state space here. The two options are there. If you have two green and red, the two options. Suppose orange is not there, zero is green, one for red. And similarly, the all possible outcomes. If the row vector is there, all possible elements lambda I, then the lambda one in the j equal to previous set defined j1 2 3 etc. So if lambda I greater than 0, greater than equal to 0, row vector lambda with all the elements it is greater than 0 is called, the row vector with all the elements is called a measure, and sum of the lambda I values equal to 1, that's a distribution or a probability measure. So now, as we just someone asked a good question, so I just maybe I'll just quickly finish the slide. Again, I'll start after the break. So the stochastic, as we defined just now for that question, is a model which is a time dependent. That means here a time in a random experiment, the sample space, there is no time. If you recollect the random outcome of a experiment, sample space, there is no time attached. Whereas in the stochastic process, the time attached in the sense that x1 is a outcome of a first experiment, x2 outcome of a second time experiment, outcome of a third time, and so on. So collection of all the random variables together, we define as a stochastic process. So this is usually denoted by the curly brackets xn, n belongs to j. In this experiment, if j equal to so and so. So this is a time dependent. The time dependency is not there in the sample space. This is just a collection. There is a collection. So when we when we want to define these random variables with some associate with the time, outcome with the time, outcome of an experiment with the first time when you toss a coin, second time when you toss a third time when you toss a coin, and so on. Or similarly, if you enter an office building or a college, if you're a student, you are at the door, and your stochastic process starts when you put a first step into the building. Second step, you toss a coin. If it is heads, you turn right. If it is the tail, you turn left. And you keep on tossing coin. Each step you take inside the building, after say 100 times you toss a coin, you see that if you put a one step right side of a building inside the building, you put a right side. One step if it is the head, if it tail, you put a left side, and you continue after 100 times you toss a coin and see where you end. That's a stochastic process. Because you would never know from the main door of the building of your school, of your college, of your office, if you're a faculty, then you see that first time you put a coin, first step, second step, and so on. After 100 steps, you don't know where you're going to end.
And in these examples, how many random variables would be there after entering into the building? Two or more than two?
Yeah, either you get a head or you get tail. Only the random variable, you get only two states here.
Yes. So corresponding
you get a head or tail. So if you get a head, you turn right one step, and then if you turn right, if you get a tail, you get left side. If you get it again tail, again left, so on, or again right, left, or right, so on.
Yes.
So you would not know after 100 steps, 100 times you toss a coin, where you will end up, which part of the building you end, you don't know.
Yes, that's true that in this random walk, certainty is not there definitely, but how many random variables would be there according to this formula, which is being shown here in this slide? Xn is that n is the element of j and the value if and the possible
Oh,
value of
in this on the slide, yeah, j equal to 1 to 3 infinity. This is an infinite process for j, previous j we defined this j.
yes. So like in this example which you gave just now, what are the possible values of j?
J equal to 1, 2, 3, so on.
But then I have only two possibilities. Either I'll get a head or a tail. Accordingly, I'll
Oh,
make
okay.
a random of what
In
they
the
like me.
coin tossing example, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, coin tossing example, only two options. N equal to j means j equal to 1 head and tail. That's it, head or tail. But the time is different. You 100 times you are tossing a coin. That doesn't mean the 100 outcomes. Outcomes are only two
Hmm.
in the coin tossing.
Yes,
So
I am.
the random variable, the outcome could be same, but you would not know which outcome each time. You each time you toss a coin, you would not know what would be the outcome. So state space is only two states. Head is a state, tail is a state.
Hmm.
Only two states in that experiment. State space is h comma t.
Right.
State space is h comma t. The set of values xn that will take, that is called state space. And the states or elements within a state space are called states. What are the elements? So in the case of coin tossing, the outcomes are always only two.
Yes.
There cannot be any third outcome. So each outcome is a state, and they're all together. All the outcomes are called state space. So state space in the coin tossing experiment is only a coin experiment is the set is h comma t. That's a state space, and the states are head and tail.
Yes.
Is
Right.
it clear?
Yeah.
Good. So the state space could be discrete or continuous. So in terms of the suppose a temperature, you are measuring a temperature of the in a day. It's a continuous, isn't it? Temperature, although we measure the the number 45 degrees or 24 degrees whatever, but it changes. It cannot jump from 24 to 45. So it's a continuously changing. So that's an outcome experiment of a continuous space or a continuous set, but each is that means the you don't know in previously say previous whether like a thermometer, like a temperature of a human body changes, but changes, the fluctuation is not, that won't jump. Or the ECG value do not jump, isn't it? So that's a continuous. So when we discuss that, we'll again continue after the break. So we'll meet again in about. Sorry for the delay today because of inaugural. Naturally, it's some delay. So we'll meet after say 10 minutes. I want to reduce 15 to 10 minutes the break. You see on your all your clocks what are the local time. That's we'll meet in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Gandhi.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
So I'll be seeing you in about.
At 7:30
India time.
at Indian time, we will meet again.
Yes.
Sir,